Okay. Everybody bear with me. I'm just going to check and make sure the stream is actually running.
No, it still says.
Yeah, I'm okay, there we are. It's on.
Are we on?
It's on. So, Mr. Chairman,
Right.
Yes.
with your permission, shall we do the flag salute and then start the meeting?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so I guess everybody can stand or whatever, and maybe we'll start, Bob.
Okay. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag
to the flag
of the United States of America,
America.
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We're back. Now we know standing and sitting.
I had to go find a flag.
Anita, do you want to do the roll call, please?
Yes, I'd like to do the roll call for attendance. Mr. Calabro.
Here.
Mr. Flansbaum.
Here.
Mr. Halverson.
Here.
Mr. Katz. Mr. Schuster.
Here.
Mr. Stafford Smith.
Present.
Mr. Kirschner.
Here.
Thank you. And Mr. D'Elia is here, but he's not counted as a quorum.
Okay.
We have a quorum.
Thank you all. Okay. Minutes from February?
Sorry, the February, I tied up with it. I will have them ready for the next meeting.
Okay, that's okay. Next meeting's May 12th, is it, I think?
May 13th.
May 13th. Okay, so from what I understand, as of today, the anticipated status is that May 13th we'll still be doing it this way. So we'll get them distributed earlier and everybody will get a chance to take a look at it and hopefully we can get a vote on it that time. Finance reports also, hopefully we're going to get through the VPN that we have set up now, we'll get better access to records and be able to put together a finance report. We do have a bill list, so you should all have that in your packet. And Anita, anything unusual in there?
No, well, only thing to let you know is that we have, on the bottom section is our bills that we are presenting this month. We released the March bills at last month's at the meeting. Last month we didn't have a meeting, but we released them.
Right.
They were pretty much standard. And this time we have one bill. We gave a mobilization check for the purchase of the trailer for Lakewood Airport.
Yeah, and I'll talk about.
What's the Wings Agency?
I'm sorry. The Wings Agency is an insurance company, and so we've always carried insurance on the airport, but with the transitioning FBO situation, we needed to beef up our coverage and go to a frontline position. We worked with our current insurance agents to try and what that would look like, and it was very expensive. So Wings Agency does a lot more airport business around the state. Okay. And so they were.
And the other thing I saw that was crazy was the alarm monitoring. It's a lot of money. Is this a month, a quarter?
Quarterly.
So yeah,
the
monitoring
fire inspection service and monitoring, $745 seemed like a lot.
That was the $745. Well, you're talking about, okay, that's
for select security.
$745 was an annual alarm testing. It's a mandatory thing that the Ocean County Fire Marshal wants to do.
Yeah.
And so that is the testing.
Yeah, so they come in and test each of the buildings.
$495 is quarterly.
Okay, just making sure we're getting a decent deal. That seems steep.
Well, listen, we're not tied into them. We can shop it again. We shopped it the first time we had, I forgot what they were called. Select Security was called something else before, Garden State? We'll have to look it up.
Okay.
So but we can do that probably before we come around to our next yearly renewal. We can shop it a little bit and see if there's a better deal out there. Thanks, Tom.
Sure.
Okay, so we need a motion on those bills. Maybe I should just describe because it's a larger expense, the trailer. Working with the township manager and with the special projects director, Niorecci, we do a number of options for the trailers. Everybody will remember last year we demolished the rotting and falling down old trailer that was the terminal at the airport. And while we took a few months to see if we could fast track a different arrangement and try to get our private entity moving faster, it's too slow, and we can't go on another season or two with no FBO building in place. We needed to replace that. We looked into some options for lease or purchase, and this one far away came away as the best value, because for what it'll cost us to lease one for 2 years, delivery, setup, breakdown at the end of those 2 years, we're basically going to own this asset. And then if at the end of 2 years we're able to get out of it, we can either repurpose it somewhere else on the airport or in the town, or even resell it. It'll still have a pretty good resale value attached to it. So it seemed like a no-brainer.
Is it used?
It's used, yes. It's used. So it's on site already. We're waiting. We need to get a courtesy review from the planning board, which is in the works already. And then we need to get the final install and some basic repair in there, fix up some of the flooring and just small stuff. But that'll give us a nice that will be able to definitely last the 2 years. We're hoping it won't be longer than that, but if it is, it's certainly sturdy enough to do that. I mean, the last one was supposed to be there, I think, 2 years and ended up being there 50 years. So we're hoping to do a little better on moving out of it sooner. Okay, so if we could get a motion and a second on the bill list.
Make a
Move
motion
to accept the bills.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I think you have to, for that one, I need a roll call.
Roll call.
Money spending.
Mr. Calabro.
Yes. And
Mr.
good luck with that
Flansbrough.
new laptop.
Yeah. Mr. Halverson.
Yes.
Mr. Schuster.
Yes.
Mr. Stafford Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Kirschner.
Yes.
Okay, you usually abstain from
Yeah.
For the, I don't know what number it is.
3827 and
3837.
3837.
All right.
Wasn't there, yeah.
Okay, and did you, Anita, I missed it. Did you record Justin's vote?
Nope, I got it.
Yeah,
Okay. Great.
Mr. Flansbaum, yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, for Executive Director's report. So the first thing is the CARES Act. So most of you have been following the news and know that there's been a number of congressional actions to deal with the coronavirus issue in terms of making loans available to small business and direct grants to, I think, every American that qualifies. And there's also a bill called the Coronavirus Aid Relief Economic Security Act. And a large portion of that, I think there was like about $10 billion in that act that went to airports. And obviously the bulk of it is going to large commercial passenger airport. There was a small portion of that 10 billion, I think about $100 million that were designated for general aviation airports, which there are many across the country. And so our allotment for that is $30,000. It's really good timing to get that money in. Obviously, we're doing some expenses now with setting up the terminal, and there's utility hookups and other things to be done there as well. So if they end up defraying half or so of, or maybe more of the costs with this money, that'll be great. I've already sent in a preliminary application for that money. It's 100% federal money. There's no local share, as there usually is with all the grant programs. So this is actually a fairly attractive thing that just kind of showed up, and we're on top of it. We'll keep you posted as to any further activity, if there's anything that we need to do, but we're already in the flow for that. Any questions?
So, Mr. Director, I have a question.
Yes.
When we disperse the money, the $30,000 for the trailer, we want to make sure that we take that out of airport money, right?
Well, we have it, it's designated. We have to actually shift. It's coming out of LIC general fund right now because we don't have the airport money segregated per se.
Okay.
But that's something that we have to do. We have to actually split things
Because
up
we
so
tend
that
to be
can.
restricted on money that comes in for the airport to be used for just for the airport. So
That's
we might
correct.
as well utilize it that way.
That's correct. Obviously, when it comes in there, it's going to have to go directly to those expenses. But we can use it as a compensation for expenses layout. We've done that in the past. We had certain grants where we were waiting for certain money to come through. The LIC has actually, quote unquote, loaned the money to the town, and then when the money comes through the grants, they've been repatriated to us. So we certainly do that. But yes, in general, we want to be able to segregate off all airport revenue and expenses so that we can track it better. And certainly as the airport revenue grows from various sources, it makes more sense to keep it isolated to that activity. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Okay, the second item on the report is the Strand Building boiler replacement. Everybody knows that went into deep freeze, unintended, for the winter, because we really couldn't do anything while the heating system, during the heating season. Heating season, I think, ended a few days ago. So we were out there a week ago, I think, with the Hutchinson people. They were doing some imaging and other things because of the complexity of boiler room. For those of you who've been down there, it's really a tight squeeze the way it is now. And they had to get their demolition and install people in there to see how they would break down and take out the old system, and also whether they were going to be able to fit in the new system, because we're not letting them break any walls or cut anything and so on. So I believe that it was properly done, and in terms of the prep, and now we're just waiting for scheduling so that we can get that project completed. Okay, the terminal acquisition and installation we talked about, so that's a project in process right now. If you drive by, you'll see the two pieces of the double wide trailer that are on site, but to be set in place. And final install, of course, is awaiting our planning board review. The helipad grant, that's an interesting one, because we had basically gotten to the point of where we didn't think that was ever going to happen. It's been years since the state funded the design of the helipad and parking spaces. And every year we apply for grants from the state, and they usually go to things like cutting trees, other types of, critical safety maintenance or obstruction removal. And we always throw in, how about letting us construct that helipad? And over the years, it's been really difficult even to get a hearing on it because, the various administrations that have flowed through over the last 10 years, they weren't willing to fund it. And so this year we were really shifting our focus somewhere else, but we decided to throw it in anyway. Let's ask for the helipad grant. And lo and behold, it came through. So that's actually a great development for us. We've already submitted to the state 4 potential locations for it. Although I think for anybody familiar with the layout of the airport, where the tie downs are before you get to the wooded area, At the back end of it, there's an old building there near the beacon, and that old building has been used for years for making banners. The plan is to take that building down and to locate on that site the dedicated helipad, the big H that you always see, and parking spots for helicopters there. I've already been in touch with the medevac company and other users of helicopter traffic in Lakewood, and there's a lot of excitement about this. So people are excited about it. And what's great for us also is through prior grants, we've had the ability to do Jet A fueling. It's just, there's never been quite enough demand to really have us go and put that into place. But as helicopters become more and more a central activity at the airport, and the helipad will help with that, that will drive Jet A fuel. And Jet A fuel is more profitable, and also as other types of smaller jet aircraft are being developed that can utilize a smaller runway like we have, that will become relevant as well. So these are really good developments for us. FBO discussions, our airport committee has participated in a number of meetings with potential FBO new operators, if you will. You'll remember that the fellow who has FBO and is kind of helping us through this transition had his key man, unfortunately, had a heart attack and passed away 2 months ago, 3 months ago, maybe now. And so he's been helping us through the transition, but it is a transition. We need to find a new FBO or take it on ourselves. And taking it on ourselves comes with a whole load of load that's difficult for us. So we'd rather find a new entrepreneurial partner to take on the FBO. That is the plan. That is the discussions that we're having with a number of qualified applicants. So we'll keep you posted. Purchase of equipment for the airport park and ride. There are 3 resolutions on today's agenda, and they include purchasing a piece of equipment for the township. We had asked the Public Works Department, who now are doing some demolition and some construction here and there, and to bring their expertise to bear to help us build our park and ride so that we could do it with minimal outlay. We had looked at the potential of doing it with contractors that were doing work in the area, and the cost structure was way too high. So Public Works is willing to do it. We have preliminary design and what have you for what they will do. I mean, it's not the most complex thing, but they're missing some equipment to be able to do the site prep. And the critical piece is they call this a grappler. Basically pulls trees out of the ground, stumps out of the ground. So they've asked us to paying for that, buying that piece of equipment, donating it to the town as it were. And that's in keeping with the Industrial Commission's history. We've done things like that over the years. And I think it's a really good investment, because for less than $30,000, we're buying a critical piece of equipment. It's good for the town and certainly good for us. So that's on your agenda today for approval. The P3 conference. So I'm going to throw it to Greg in a moment, but Greg and I attended just before everything went crazy in this world. We attended a conference for public-private partnerships. And given what we're trying to do on a number of fronts, but certainly with regard to the complete remake of the front end of the airport with commercial, consumer-friendly activity and things that will enhance the overall value of the airport, we attended a conference where there was a lot of good content and a lot of good information about how you structure these things, who's done it successfully, how to do it successfully, and we made a number of good contacts there. So, Greg, do you want to speak about that a little bit?
Yeah, we had the opportunity of a lifetime to see how strategic partnerships can be formed, and there really are very few boundaries as to where you can take a project with this. You combine forces between a public entity and a private entity, and you use the scales of their economic prowess to get good value for the dollar and their expertise in getting through the processing, permits, CAFR, things like that. These people do it on a regular basis. They share in the expense, development, planning, the implementation, and at the end, the town still owns it. And they add to the life cycle of projects. For instance, if you build a new municipal building, they'll maintain it as part of the deal for whatever the terms of the contract prescribe. And doing so at the end of the term that is defined by the contract, you have a building that's essentially still has a great life cycle to it. The interesting thing about it is the diversity amongst the people that join in these things. It's boundless. You have a prime example. The President of the United States just entered into a private-public partnership with many different entities to provide ventilators, to do things that we need in this urgent pandemic. It is truly the way of the future. It is used in Europe and primarily used in Canada. And they make tremendous strides and good value for the public dollar. And it was an exciting place to be. I met some interesting contacts. I brought back I call it a reference manual now. It lays out the process, how you take it from start to finish, where the pitfalls are. The biggest point driven home is you assign risk. And it is probably the most treacherous part of any contract negotiation, is deciding who is going to be responsible for what. This lays it out clearly, and I can only see good things coming from it. Will it be without problems? Absolutely not. But will it be advantageous to us in getting a big buck? I don't see any other way to do it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Greg. I think, just to emphasize one or more points of what Greg is saying, it's not the only model that we can use, but it's a critical thing. It's a valuable arrow to have in our quiver to be able to bring this idea of public-private partnerships, figure out how to structure them. It's non-trivial in the structuring, because it's all in the structuring. Once you get into operation mode of the project, everything's been defined and everybody knows what their role is, and everybody knows what the expectation is, who's carrying what risk and who's got what beneficial outcome at the end. And it's a great model. There is legislation already on the books in New Jersey to enable this. There are, I think maybe there's one or two actual examples of where it's been put into use in New Jersey, maybe in a hospital setting, if I remember correctly. But certainly for municipalities, counties, and maybe states, it's certainly a valuable tool and something that we want to take advantage of. So hopefully we're going to see some project concepts coming up here shortly that will leverage the P3 concept. The LIPAC meeting. So hopefully some of them are watching this on stream. But LIPAC had been at our last live meeting, and we had suggested that we have a meeting, and we actually invited Mayor Coles to join, and we met with the membership of LIPAC. We discussed the wide range of issues and the strengths and weaknesses and things and going on in the market at the time, and certainly within the industrial park. And there were a number of points of great emphasis. I want to thank Committeeman Leah as our liaison, joined in that meeting, and it was a very productive meeting. And I think the best upshot of it for the LIPAC members and for us as well is that the mayor has re-emphasized with township manager an emphasis on our focusing the Schedule C activities, which we saw such good benefit from. That's where the county comes in, and we're doing paving and other things in the area, and we get to actually get a lot of bang for our buck, get them to do more roads than we would otherwise be able to do. That they've asked for them to emphasize industrial park roads. So there's going to be more paving going on. I did ride the Airport Road and Oak Street yesterday. There are a number of potholes. Anita, we need to send a note to Phil Rue. I don't know how much of his crew is out there doing pothole repair, but these are mostly like patch points. There's one near the MUA water tower. If Houston has a shovel and Maybe he wants to get out there. There's some on Airport Road and some on Oak Street. But I know those are also, Oak Street is certainly on our schedule, Jeff, for the big paving job this year. So is that moving on schedule more or less, or is it? Jeff, you're muted. Let me unmute. You have to.
There we go.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Oak and Tobin was bidded or was the low bidder. They're supposed to be awarded at this week's township meeting. We have a pre-construction meeting scheduled for Friday, and construction is supposed to be starting by the end of the month. The bids came in so low, we're looking to extend it to Swarthmore, to as much as Swarthmore as we can under the existing bid with DOT.
Oh, right on. Excellent. Excellent. That's fantastic. Okay, keep it up. Send them out onto Airport also if you can. Well, we may have to do that with the county. But the good news is that there's movement on that front, and that's continuing apace despite whatever challenges we have with the current format. It's great to hear that those projects are moving forward. That's fantastic. And then the last item that I wanted to report on is with regards to the 17-acre tract that we've had some presentations on and discussion about the 17 acres. I call 17 acres. We'll have to do a survey at the end because there's some question. Is it 16 acres once you vacate the streets that are in there? There are paper streets and so on. It's either 16 or 17 acres. Whatever it is, we have a on our bill list. You know, we did run an appraisal on it, and the appraisal came in pretty good. Actually, at 300 an acre for one scenario, 400 an acre if the scenario is a little different. But there was a presumption in there, and that presumption at that value was we were going to be successful with our application to the state to have this added to the industrial node. If you remember, and some of you will remember this because you've been around long enough to remember, it's going on forever. When the plan endorsement was happening, so there were maps that defined what parts of the industrial park would be included in the industrial node, and it was basically all of the industrial park. But for some reason, this 17 acres was left out of that map. So late in the process, we went to the state and we said, hey, why isn't this included? And in order to not slow down the process of actually getting the town approved for plan endorsement, we agreed to postpone that issue until after the plan endorsement was in place. And then there was a process in there for us to suggest or appeal that some other portion should be added. We did that a number of months ago in the context of the plan endorsement biennial review. They basically do a review, see how we've done with executing on a number of plans of, maintenance and protecting waterways and doing things like that, which thankfully everything is going well. At that point, we took the opportunity as the Industrial Commission. Together with Anita, we put together some maps and some supporting information that supported the argument that we should not be limited to 30% lot coverage there, that the entire area is in the sewer service area, so it obviously was contemplated for development, and the demand is so high, as you all know, we're basically out of developable property in terms of what's really available. And we have demand, we have interest in those properties, and we wanted to maximize both the use of the property and the return that we get in terms of sale for those lots. And this week we got news that it's being approved. So the DEP is putting the final touches on those comments, and the good news is, so we're going to go at 80% lot coverage. What I mentioned about the appraisal being 300 or 400 an acre, that is because, if you remember, one of the proposals that we had for that property proposed a eastbound only ingress and egress because there's a problem. The problem is the property runs up against the township line with brick, and there's not a lot of room there on the eastern end of the ramp coming off of the parkway. So there's room to make a right in, but you couldn't put a full interchange because it's so close to the existing traffic light at the Garden State Parkway, and there's no obvious way there right now to have a westbound movement out of the property. The presumption in the appraisal, which everybody's welcome to read, is that we would either partner with the property to the east, which is also a proposal before us. Therefore, there would be the ability to get egress from the property somewhere further east where a traffic light could be introduced, and then one could make a westbound movement into Lakewood. Or if there was another solution, and while we're not at liberty to disclose it in public yet, we do have a solution that is viable, which would allow us to have a westbound exit from the property. So on that basis, I think there's good argument for the 400-acre valuation. This recognizes also that there's water in the street, but the sewer solution needs to yet be figured out. So it's not without some issues yet to be determined. But the good news is A, we're getting that 80% lot coverage, and B, the numbers are coming in good recognition of the value of the property. So hopefully we'll see some more activity on that soon. Okay, that's it for my report. Are there any questions on any of that? No? Great. Okay. So then, I know the attorney has a few things for us in closed session. Is there anything, Sean, that you have in open session?
No, Steve, just for closed.
Okay. Excellent. There's nothing here for old business or new business. Anita, I'll hand it to you. You need to unmute your mic. I'll hand it to you for the resolutions.
Okay. All right. Hello. I'm looking for a motion for resolution 200401 is a resolution of the Industrial Commission authorizing the purchase of equipment accessory Caterpillar model number 938K work tools rake 120-inch via a co-op purchasing agreement that Lakewood Township already participates in with Cat Foley Cat. This would be to them. Looking for a motion.
We'll make the motion.
I got
Second.
Tom.
Tommy. On roll call. Mr. Calabro.
Yes.
Mr. Flansbaum.
Yes.
Mr. Halverson.
Yes.
Mr. Schuster.
Yes.
Mr. Stafford Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Kirschner.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, resolution 200402 is a resolution of the Industrial Commission authorizing the purchase of a temporary terminal to be installed at Lakewood Airport. Essentially, this was the authorization. We were submitting this for the meeting that we were going to have in the beginning of April. That didn't happen. So this is just to authorize us to pursue it for an estimate of, not to exceed 40,000. So a motion to adopt that resolution.
So moved.
Got
Second.
Tom and Hal.
Roll call. Mr. Calabro.
Yes.
Mr. Flansbaum.
Yes.
Mr. Halverson.
Yes.
Mr. Schuster.
Yes.
Mr. Stafford Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Kirschner.
Yes.
Thank you. That will adjust our, we will add that to our budget, line to our budget for these. Resolution 200403 is a resolution authorizing an award of contract for the purchase of this temporary terminal to Acer Trailer Sales in the amount not to exceed $33,900.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
You get that? I got.
Yes. It's great that it pops over to the camera. On roll call, I'd like Mr. Calabro,
Yes.
Mr. Flansbaum,
Yes.
Mr. Halverson,
Yes.
Mr. Schuster,
Yes.
Mr. Stafford Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Kirschner.
Yes.
Thank you. That's wonderful. We're getting some work done. Okay. All
Okay,
right.
I did want to jump back to one item in the agenda, and that item is the comments from the public, as was posted in our notice of meeting and is the practice that the Township Committee followed. We had posted an email address that was available for people to send in questions or comments. I do see one, and I will read it into the record now. And it comes from, the sender is Rise Up Ocean County. And the content is, my name is Richard Ciulo, and I am a resident of Toms River. On behalf of Rise Up Ocean County, I would like to know how much land has been sold by the Lakewood Industrial Commission year to date, how much money has been raised as a result of those sales, and going forward in 2020, what does the commission anticipate selling, and what revenues are anticipated from those sales? Thank you.
Message from Dark Side there is.
That's
That's me.
question. I don't know what that is, but
Yoda.
One of my alerts.
okay.
My pills. My
Thanks.
pills.
Okay. So mute your phone, your camera. So to Mr. Ciulo, I don't believe there have been any sales per se this year as yet. As mentioned earlier in the meeting, the Industrial Commission has precious little land for sale anymore. We've seen an enormous growth in the industrial park in the past number of years, and we've saw some pretty good sales. Obviously, if we could do them today, we'd make even more money. But they've been really good. You can see from the appraisal that we mentioned earlier that values are still quite high in the park, and that's all good news. We are working to get some additional land available for industrial use, and in future meetings we'll be able to report on the status of the availability of that land. But hope that answers your question, and otherwise feel free to reach my office in a regular email chain outside of the scope of this meeting. And if I could get a motion to go to closed session, we'll deal with some litigation and contracts issues.
Move to go to closed session.
Second.
Tommy, and second by Justin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you all. Hold on one second. And should restart right now.
Cycling right now.
We're back.
It's not yet. No,
No, you don't have it yet?
no. Okay, have it.
Okay, we're back. All right, so do we have any comments from the chairman?
Yeah, I want to direct something to Greg about those magnetic passes and the gates. You want to say something about that?
Yeah, I had mentioned to Steve some time ago, and I think he's already made preparations to get some ideas as to what the cost would be to go the fob access for access to the trailer and the gate that allows vehicles to drive on the taxiway back towards the hangars. I don't know that Steve has the information as of yet, but I know it's been researched.
Yeah, I did meet with the fellow who does the security stuff. He's putting together a proposal for us, and it will be for fob access. Two phases. One would be fob access to the terminal. So there's 3 doors to the terminal. Whoever is going to come into whichever doors, and we'll be able to designate them. If we end up dedicating one door to clubs, for example, if that's going to be their exclusive access, then we won't necessarily need that one done. But if it's going to be public access the way we currently foresee it, then we'll do all those 3 doors, as well as the walking gate, the one that has the pin around it with the combination lock. That one as well, because that probably has more pedestrian access than anything. And the people coming through the drive-ins, we're going to have some more discussion just to understand what the scale of it is, because you may be looking at a very large number, and you have to figure out how you deal with transient traffic. So there's some complications to doing it for the drive-in traffic, but we'll talk about that. That's in play.
You know, as the assets inside of the airport just get, increase in value, we really need to know who's coming and going and when, by having the key fob access only on every single entry point, we'll at least have a log of who's there and when.
Yeah. So, and that actually works together with our camera usage. It's really good, because even yesterday while I was there, a car drove in, seemed to be taking pictures or video or something, and drove out, and I was able to access the cameras and pull up the license plate. So if there was anything suspicious that happened, we'd be able to have that run down by the police department. So it's good. It's a good enhancement that we should be looking at. No question. Anything from any other commissioners?
Steve?
Yes,
Mike.
sir, Mr. Liaison.
I think that it alluded to the fact that you got another question from, was it Rise Up Ocean County?
Other one, no.
No, there was one, and I read it in.
Oh, I thought you got another question. Okay.
No,
Oh.
no more questions. They were all answered.
Okay.
Very good. Okay, so if there's nothing else, we get a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Hi, Eddie.
Hey, aye.
There he is.
Thank you all very
Goodbye.
much.
Aye.
All right, stay well.